Recently, I've begun to categorize my videos into 3 main buckets, 2 of which could be seen as one or subcategory one of the other. The first bucket is notes. With notes, I try to be basically as neutral as I possibly can. Why? Because I'm using myself as an audience proxy. Why? Because this is the easiest proxy I can use, at least in my thinking, because I am the proxy. I can access this, which also means that I don't have to rely on any feedback. And one simplification rule I have used for simplifying my production process and getting my average production rate per day up since turning basically an adult, I also decided, I don't know how the sentence began, I basically decided to turn off all comments. Why? Because if I then log in, I am not exposed to something random that somebody could have written. I log in, I do my work, and I basically get out of the work. And if I think my work is bad, then I can improve on it based on the information that I already have, which is in me. So I can use this, I can have an infinite production process without external feedback. Now this also assumes that I am not somehow, it doesn't, let's just go back to the main categorization. I don't wanna now have this point of a sub-hierarchical point, which then would mean I also have to mention all of the higher hierarchical points, which is often, or a common way to make videos longer that I seem to tend to use, or fall into. A trap, one could say. So the first one is sharing notes. I share basically the things that I observe in my life, that I notice in my life. Okay, this is something that happened and now I try to improve on it, and this is how I do it or did it. The second part is where I try to entertain, even though you might say that's ridiculous. I did make a couple of channels already kind of as an experiment in which I at least make some jokes here and there. The third part is music production. One could also say this is part now of entertainment, since music is largely seen, one could argue, as entertainment. Now, I think the music actually has the highest potential. The problem with the entertainment thing is that it is not neutral. So therefore, the less neutral I am, and the more I try to actually be kind of extreme in order to be, I don't try to be extreme, but one could describe humor maybe sometimes at least as going into an extreme to get, I don't know, some reaction. So the problem with humor is that it edges on. And the problem with edging on is that it might not be a very good business model, as the risk per video or per whatever production thing then seems to be higher. Music, on the other hand, especially if instrumental, seems to exactly be the opposite. Not the opposite, but it seems to have less decision variables that, when optimized for views or revenue generated, potentially create this problem. Now, with lyrics, it also might be different, because then one is just saying things, and because a song lyric, for example, is just a model. So in my thinking, every sentence is kind of a model of reality. So it tries to depict a situation, a correlation, a causation between two things. I went to the church, I went outside, and then it rained. Now, not necessarily there is a correlation or a causation, but there is at least some linking going on, which then often might also be an indirect correlation or something like this. So there is some link between all of the different parts of a sentence. So therefore, to some extent, it seems to be kind of a model of reality. But this is not so much my view, but I also want to now say this is the view of somebody else who wrote a book about this, because then I would maybe misrepresent whatever the person tried to say. So the third bucket, music production, I think has kind of actually the biggest potential, because I don't need to put my thoughts out and to a certain extent sell my privacy on topics, which I to a certain extent am doing. When I post about my health, for example, or I post about not necessarily my health, but I post about sport, but sport is so interrelated with health, it seems. And then I actually am posting about health, and well, then the problem seems, at least, that first of all, there are only so many things that I can share, because I still have to kind of learn them. So there is a limit on the rate of production for everything that is kind of shared thoughts. Now, the next thing in terms of music, but on the other hand, music, as long as my body, in terms of my body thinking of it as the subconscious, creates kind of these ideas, which are mostly musical ideas, which I cannot really think rationally about, at least in my current viewing. Maybe I can So I can try to constrain these different things, and then within this constraint, my subconscious seems to come up with different ideas. But as long as I, if I say, okay, I now record video for an hour, my body might give me motivation for maybe 40 minutes of it, and then eventually I'm kind of marginally running out of ideas for new content, which in this case is sometimes a musical riff or something else, or it might be a song, but of course I cannot really write a song improvising. I tried this in the past, basically just as practice. So the assumption was that I needed to practice music anyway in order to get not worse at playing instruments and also singing. What this resulted in, but I also needed to turn this basically into a business. So what I tried then to do is to just record everything I practiced, which put a lot of pressure on me, which also meant that there was quite a high threshold to recording. But it also now resulted in 445 recorded music pieces, one could say, because describing it as music would maybe not do other music justice. And so I actually, as of yesterday, have decided that I would now archive kind of this channel, but simultaneously post all of these videos, maybe go through the worst 5, 10, 20, 25%, and thereby increase the average quality of these videos. And so in total, sharing notes, being neutral, then entertainment to a certain extent whenever I feel like it. But of course, this is not a very good business strategy, feeling like it. And then music production seem to be the two main buckets, with sharing notes as well as music kind of being the biggest ones, and also having kind of mirrored decision variables. The sharing notes being basically talking about things, whereas music does not talk so much about things, being kind of the exact opposite in that way, one could say.